Let
I
me
love
ask
that
you,
place.
speaking of like mental toughness and mental notes, um, surprised a little bit that Coach Rhule took some time to be so candid about the portal and kind of how that was a topic of discussion on Saturday. I thought it was extremely enlightening.
Yeah, no, I was not surprised he was candid. He's been pretty candid about that topic for years now, and so he's very. I think that candidness is part of his toolkit to navigating the portal.
Yeah.
He's very good at being able to be straightforward, and if you give everybody, if you lay it out in an honest way, and you put the ball back in the court of the kid, or in this case, the football back in play, you let that player make the best decision that they think they can make. Now, the thing that he didn't push this too hard, but I think one of the things he talks about with the players is, now, listen, think you may get a little bit more money over there, but remember the things that you get here. And so there's things at Nebraska that are pretty sweet, but when you go somewhere else, it's not the same. And I'm not saying it adds up to $100,000, but it does add up. Like, consider the training table at Nebraska versus what Kentucky or what some other school is going to give you. Consider the training facilities. Consider the perks you get at Nebraska. Consider some of the NIL opportunities that you will get here but wouldn't get there. Like, there's all kinds of things that you can start to fit in that. Look, consider the notoriety you'll have. Some guys don't want notoriety. Some guys want to go to Syracuse, where you're second fiddle to the basketball team. Some guys, they get to Nebraska and they're like, yeah, you know what? Too much for the fishbowl. I want to go somewhere else where maybe I don't have to. Maybe I'm just I'm at a smaller school where football isn't as big of a deal, and I don't feel like I got to be somewhere all the time. Like, you kind of lay it out for everybody. They're probably going to lose a defensive back in the portal, probably not this week, but next week, that they probably don't want to lose, because the reality is they're not all going to play. So, that's going to happen. I think Rhule is well equipped to handle it. And, that's life. Would you have wanted Emmett Johnson or Dante Dowdell? Because they probably weren't going to keep both. And I think they kind of knew that.
Mm. Sam,
and so
go ahead.
They got Emmett. Emmett went into the portal first, right? Then they got him out of there, and then Dante went into the portal. So I think they kind of knew they might lose one of
And
them.
I don't know. I think what Dante, it was like, look, we just told you. Now you're going to do this. Like, that happened pretty quick. And they're like, okay, you can chase it if you want, but you did rush for double-digit touchdowns here. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
All right, you're not getting good information. But I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting on the heels of what Coach Holgerson said about, hey, you're afforded some things here that you're not going to get at some other places. Like, go ask Hunter. And I get it. Cal may not be the prime example, but Holgerson is considered very worldly.
He's been
and very honest. So didn't matter what example he's used. He's not some guy that needs to have his hand out. So when he tells you that there are things that are here that are unique in terms of opportunities and what it provides, to have it doubled down on by Coach Rhule, the next media availability, you almost you get the sense that the players are pretty appreciative too, because it doesn't seem like those guys are chomping at the bit to want to leave either.
Agreed. I think there's a pretty wide appreciation among the players for what Nebraska offers and the people who are there. I do. I don't know if it's always been that way, but I do get the sense point. That I do get that sense. And when I say I don't know that it's always been that way, like I mean that. Like I think the players pretty much liked Bo.
It hasn't been this competitive probably since then, though. So you need something else to offset that. You know what I mean? Like that's my like if I was these guys, and it's highly competitive, and he says, "Listen, 5 safeties could start here. You better have." I immediately think of the running back room in the 90s. You better have something else that you're hanging your hat on, other than needing to be the man if you're going to stick around. You know what I mean? And it's got to be love of one another. loving of where you are, like it truly being family. Nobody really wants to leave their family that likes their family, right?
Mhm.
It's like, oh man, it's pretty good here,
Right.
So it just seems
Yeah.
like they're building in these not contingencies, but these things that are,
Like guardrails almost.
yeah, that make it cool to compete while you're here because this is what here is. So embrace all of it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they've developed a perfectly good culture down there. Certainly, I think that's happened, and I think there's a positivity that I appreciate, and I think he's getting the kind of work that he wants from his players, and I think I think he probably wouldn't say it quite like this, but I think he likes this staff and the expertise they bring to the table, and maybe some of the pressure that they take off of him, because there's just fewer guys that are doing it for the first time or younger. This is a little bit more seasoned and experienced group that's operating. So, I think all those things are true. They got to keep coming. And I think they've got to navigate the portal here in the next week or two and live with maybe some of what may happen. I mean, again, there's going to be a guy or two that you just really didn't want to lose.
Yeah.
And you lose them. They've lost some people from the portal, from the team in the last couple of years that they didn't want to lose, right? Wandale Robinson. There you go. Wandale was the guy that you wouldn't have wanted to lose. And as it turned out, Luke McCaffrey was another one, although he didn't play quarterback when he went to Rice. There's some examples of players that over the years Nebraska felt bad about losing. That may happen again. You just have to kind of live with it. And, I don't know that they loved losing Lloyd, about last year's team.
Yeah,
I think he'll have a nice
Yeah.
He'll have a nice season at Oklahoma State. I wish he'd have stuck around. But he's got to make the decision that's best for him, and he did. And meanwhile, Nebraska's got some young guys that might be as good as Lloyd was last year. Mills and OZ might be just as good. We'll have to see. And then they seem to like Isaiah Hunter a lot, which is encouraging. He needs to be a good player. I'm sure he wasn't free.
Sam, as you kind of look through not just what he talked about in terms of the transfer portal, but also about the competitiveness in the room or in the different rooms, is that how encouraged are you by that? Are you encouraged by that? Does that move your needle at all? Is it a thing that a coach just says? Like, how do you process that? Because when I hear it, I get pretty excited about, hey, you've actually got some options rather than sort of being backed into a corner in terms of guys that you have to play regardless of if they're meeting other expectations.
I think as it relates to, where you would measure Nebraska versus, 6 or 7 years ago, yes, I think it's encouraging. How you would measure Nebraska against the rest of the Big Ten, that's the key,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
as I said on the Pick Six podcast last week, I kind of do these Big Ten look-ins all the time, right? So I've watched a lot of press conference video. I watch a lot of, whatever they'll show us of practice tape or spring games or all this stuff. And I'm just telling you, the Big Ten's going to be good. It's the teams on Nebraska's schedule, with maybe the exception of one or two, are going to be pretty good. The jury's out on UCLA because we don't know if they're going to get the Tennessee quarterback, and they might. They very well might. The jury's not really out on USC. They feel really good about where they're at. And they're probably going to be a little better than last year. Michigan State's going to be better. Michigan could be way better. I mean, Michigan was already pretty good last year toward the end of the season. Minnesota, we'll see. Maryland, the jury's out. We don't exactly know. Penn State's going to be a national title contender. They might be the number one team in the country. People are telling me it's going to be Ohio State. I'm like, okay, all right, we'll see. I think Penn State might be the better team. So, there's so many good teams on the schedule that Nebraska has to go into every single offseason thinking, here's what we did. Here's our internal standard. We've either met or exceeded that internal standard. Now you got to look around and go, okay, how do we match up against everybody else? And you go into that off season, thinking about the last 4 minutes of that Iowa game, when a game that you had controlled from the very beginning until 5 minutes into the fourth quarter slips through your hands because you lost the line of scrimmage. Your offensive line couldn't protect the quarterback. You have to go into off seasons haunted by that stuff. That stuff has to drive you. Just like Rory McIlroy was driven by some of the things that happened and like in correcting some of those things. Nebraska has to be driven by the one or two moments that they wish that they could have changed last year against Illinois, against Iowa, certainly against USC, a game that I would just watch again and I'm like, Nebraska should have won that game.
Hey,
There's
so
many things
can I just say something, Sam? I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I was so sick of hearing about what SC did, and the watching that game was all about Nebraska. Right outside, I did love the little gap scheme and the inside zone stuff that they were doing with marks. I thought that was pretty good, but Nebraska makes a couple of plays in that game early, and I'm not even talking about anything paramount. I'm talking about either catch the ball, knock a ball down, or get a guy to the ground, or don't fall asleep and flip and cover three. Like, that game's different. That quarterback's accuracy was atrocious early, and they let his ass off the hook. I couldn't believe that people are like misremembering how that game actually went.
Well, I had to watch it again because, I think USC did some good things in that game. They did outrun Nebraska. I mean, they ran the ball better than Nebraska did.
Yeah.
But
Marks was a handful. I was glad when he took a break. And they had the little cute play on fourth down that I thought was pretty saucy, too.
But
I think
it was very good.
QB had like 5 or 6 interceptable balls in the first 3 drives.
Yeah,
he did. And, so like when you go back and look at that game and you're just like, Nebraska should have won that game. I don't think they outplayed UCLA. I think UCLA outplayed them.
Well, there was a stretch for UCLA and like for about a quarter and a half where Nebraska just couldn't adjust to the concepts, right? And that's where they benched Charles early. And then they had another corner fall asleep for the exact same route on a little beater. And I'm like, come on. But the concepts with he made some throws in that game where those things were just on. UCLA played really, really well for a good quarter and a half. Where I'm like, you got to tip your cap. You have to really tip your cap.
Yeah. And that was, I think, fortunately, that was the game where Matt Rhule realized we got to do something different on offense because, and he tried to say, well, we were trying to go slow on purpose. And I'm like, okay. That's fine. Their offense moved like sludge. So like everything has to be matched against, we've done this and we've met this internal standard now. How do we match up against our peers? If they were in the Big 12, I'd say, well, hey, they match up great. Let's sign Nebraska up for the Big 12 title game against pick the team. I don't even know. Kansas State. But they're not in the Big 12. So they don't get the luxury of playing, a Cincinnati every week or hey, let's go down and play, Houston or West Virginia that has some sort of substandard roster. They have to go play teams that have a lot of money. And I mean, again, as I've tried to tell people, okay, you can poo-poo USC and UCLA all you want. And people have tried to do that. I'm like, but look at the way that those teams have come in and played Nebraska in a variety of sports.
Yeah.
And you're not going to tell me those athletic departments don't have athletes. They've come in and they've kicked Nebraska's butt. So like those schools have been legit in the sports that Nebraska cares about, with the exception, I guess, of volleyball. But like they're good. Like USC and UCLA baseball, they're going to the Big Ten tournament. UCLA might win the league in its first year. Like these are not joke teams. So like Nebraska needs, and their fans need to get in gear and say, hey, lost 2 in football, went 1-5 in baseball, went 1-1 in men's basketball, 0-2 in women's basketball. These programs know what they're doing, and Nebraska's got to take itself up a notch, which I think they will. But that's part of the key is that you got to match yourself against your competitors.
That's Sam McKewon, Omaha World Herald. Sam, great stuff as always. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Sam.
Take care. Bye.